Buddy, we are back. We got episode number 147 of the Club and Sub podcast. This week we're talking UFC 292. We got Aljamain Sterling. He's taking on Sugar Sean O'Malley. We are being joined by our friend and a very sharp guy. Some would say the king of same game parlays, Art C on Twitter at Mr. Electrocute. Art, how's it going tonight?
Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's going great, man. It's middle of summer. Spent the day in the pool today. But great to be here. Thanks for having me. Love just shooting just talking MMA, getting some bets done, and winning some money together.
Yeah, Art, thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate it. Before we dive into UFC 292, time to get a couple items out of the way here. First of all, if you like the show, drop a like and fucking subscribe. Okay, I only saw one comment last week. That's disappointing. More comments, more shares, more likes, please, for the people. Second of all, we do this every week, but we got to sift through some of the damage from last week. Really, it was a pretty rough card for me. It's been a pretty rough year. It actually led to me going back and just kind of doing an audit on my results, which I'm not going to go too deep into that right now, but I found some decent insights. So I'm pretty confident the year is going to turn around soon, hopefully this week. But with that said, let me get into my bets from last week. It was a fucking minefield. Rafael Dos Anjos, 2.5 units, minus 125. I mentioned on here, I felt pretty weird about it. Obviously, he was just too small, too old, got bullied by Luque in that fight. I had 0.6 units, Chris Daukaus, plus 170. Honestly, I got the fight from Daukaus I wanted. I was kind of hoping for a slugfest, and that's what it was. He's just the one that went out. Don't feel too bad about that. Juliana Miller, I had her by decision and her money line. I don't really even have very strong feelings about this fight. She came out hot. She decided to be a chin bully, and she got knocked out for being a chin bully. I think the optics of the last 40 seconds of that fight were considerably worse than how competitive the fight would have otherwise been. Like, she got wobbled and then spent the last 40 seconds basically just eating nukes. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's a good bet. I just don't really have very strong feelings about a 2-minute women's KO. I also had Martin Buday, Josh Parisian goes the distance. That didn't even get close. Buday obviously came out like a house on fire. Finished Parisian pretty quick. And then to top it all off, to top the reverse sweep off, I had Polyana Viana, plus 165. Horrible bet. I had some worries about physicality coming in, and I should have listened to them because she just got smoked. And unfortunately, I also on stream last week made a bet with Evan D, our buddy, a shoey bet if I lost that. I'm not a fan of doing shoeys. If anybody's ever played rugby and experienced it, they're not a very fun thing to do. But here we are. Podcast night is brought to you by Christ Almighty, Heineken. I still can't get it out of the blur field. It's brought to you by Heineken. We're going to be doing a shoey. Really?
Oh, wow. Art's drinking a Heineken too. Holy shit.
All right. Let's
I'm not putting the shoe though, buddy.
Sponsored by Heineken. Jeez.
Oh, I'm really anxious about this. I'm worried it's going to start just dripping out all over my fucking desk here. Oh, my God.
We're not sponsored yet, but we will take a sponsorship. We will drink your beer.
What did I sign up?
This is gruesome. This is really gruesome. It's literally leaking out of the cloth in the shoe all over my desk. I'm afraid my wife's going to look in here and just come in here and start screaming at me. The cleaners were just here today.
All right. As John is continuing that, I'll finish with my bets. And so I had RDA as well, and I would echo John's sentiment there again. Too small, too old. Luque kind of bullied him down the stretch. And then I had Buday money line at minus 195. Not much to say on that. Kind of just smoked Parisian out the gate.
Yeah, Buday money line was phenomenal. Great bet. Fun card this week. I got a couple bets. One really big bet. What's up to everybody in the chat? Daz, Rob, Zen. Good to see you all. Yeah, I mean, we got 12 fights. I think
real quick, too. Art, how'd you do last card?
Yeah, how did you do last week, Art?
To be honest, I took the week off. Barely taped a lot of stuff, but I did have some RDA. Lost that. I had some. What else did I have? I had Dawadu by decision. I thought that was close. I thought it went his way. I was surprised to see Cub with the win there, but I guess that's okay.
Yeah.
And I thought Roundtree inside it. I think I had KO 1-2. That was pretty easy there. So only 3 bets that I had on the card.
I actually didn't think Cub Dawadu was that close. I'm not saying I don't like saying robbery. I'm not that guy, but like it felt like they were very, very generous with end of round scoring for like one moment, especially because it's not like he had Dawadu on skates or dropped him at any point, you know. So I thought
I just think sometimes like optically Hakeem just like gives those bad vibes. I think.
Yeah, you can't trust Hakeem. He's an absolute a flake. Anyway, we jump into this card. First fight of the night. My biggest bet on the card potentially could determine. I actually have all my bets from the first 3 fights. Potentially could determine whether or not I profit on the card. I got 4 units on Marina Moroz plus 154. I think she's great at the current line plus 120. Honestly, Korean Silva, someone I've been looking to fade since her debut. We just haven't really gotten the right moment for it yet. Obviously, Poliana Botelho, not a very good fighter, not reliable. And then last fight, she was taking on Ketlin Souza, and that was, just a huge step up in competition. But I look here, and I guess more or less my view is this. Look, we know Korean Silva doesn't have the best gas tank. She's pushed through it before. I don't think the contenders fight is necessarily indicative of her cardio in general. That was a very high-paced fight. And so we have seen her push through. But then you look at the fact that she has slowed down before. I look at her striking, and it looks terrible to me. Like, Botelho was picking her apart before she got rocked in that fight. Silva's just all really, really wild stuff. Very little defense, not very accurate. And so where she's really dangerous, we all know this, is in the grappling. And honestly, fading, like, women's submission specialists is a dangerous game to play. Admittedly, just because, I mean, WMMA, you're much more likely to catch, some kind of like weird sub than you are in, men's MMA. But, those kind of subs, those knee bars, arm bars, even jumping guillotines, they tend to go away the further up you go up the rankings here. And to me, I think this is just a gigantic jump for Silva. Marina Moroz, she fought Jennifer Maia in her last fight and lost, but she was minus 200 against the number 7 fighter at flyweight, someone who took a round off Valentina Shevchenko. Moroz is clearly, to me, a top 20 flyweight. I think she's got a clear striking edge here. That's obvious. But honestly, even in the grappling, like, yeah, I wouldn't say she's worse. If they grappled in jiu-jitsu, like in Gi's, I'd probably favor Silva in that kind of an outcome. But in MMA, I actually think Moroz is the much better grappler here. She's a better wrestler for sure. But you look at some of her grappling, she's actually really, really slick on top. She's very good at staying safe. We saw her grind out MBS on top and really punish her for trying to play guard in that fight. But even on bottom, she got taken down 6 times by Carla Esparza. And Esparza is a much more processed grappler than Korean Silva is. And Esparza wasn't really ever able to effectively pass or get to dominant positions in that fight. I think Moroz's get-ups are good. And one of the things I really like is when she does get put in positions, when her head's forward in like a front headlock, she does fight hands really well. She's very positionally aware. I just ultimately think she should win the stand-up easy. She's got the more reliable cardio in this fight. I think Silva really, really needs to sub her early, and I just don't think that's a very reliable path. You hear the rumors coming out of ATT that she's grappling with Amarim and MBS every day, and neither of them are subbing her. I really just don't believe Silva is very likely to do so. I actually think Moroz could potentially process sub Silva here. So yeah, I made her a moderate favorite. I'm big on her. Lags, what do you think?
Yeah, not to just call her like sub or bust, but I more or less think that Korean Silva is that, and because I just don't think her wrestling game is all that special, really. Her striking, I mean, big power, but not much substance. You touched on the cardio. Yeah, I think this should be Moroz slight fave at worst, really. Better striker. I think she's a better wrestler here. Better cardio. So I have a unit on her plus 130.
I mean,
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they fought in 2014, so this is technically a rematch. But Karini's sort of improved since then, right? You can't really take much away from her. They've really improved since then. I don't know. You come up with that, like it's that immovable object sort of thing where Moroz has never been finished before and Karini only has finishes, right? So something's really got to give here. I understand the premise of Karini moving up in this strength of competition. Moroz is better than sort of what we've seen. I just don't know. I haven't been impressed with Moroz. I'm not taking the Karini side, but just there's flags on the Karini side in terms of the cardio. technically 0% takedown defense, so we haven't really seen her try to defend that takedown. It's perhaps I assume she's going to be stronger, especially in round 1. So if I like the Moroz side, I might be able to live bet it after round 1 if we can see how the takedown defense goes. If she flops on her back right away, then fight's over, or maybe a submission off her back. But that's where I'm leaning. I don't like the price too much. Maybe lean the over, like you guys said. But for me, it's a pass right now. I might try to get in live. But that's where my head's at.
Yep, that makes sense to me. And Art, when you're off, do you mind just muting when you're not up?
Sure.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Actually, Art, you can unmute because I'm starting with you here. We got Andrea Lee taking on Maria Silva. Andrea Lee, current line here, Natalia Silva. My God.
I was going to say.
Natalia Silva, minus 330. Comeback Lee, plus 270. Art, what are your thoughts?
I'm on the Lee side here. I think the line's a little bit wide. I don't know how you get minus 350, minus 400 on Natalia Silva, who's coming off a win off of Jasmine. She took Jasmine by decision. Took Teresa in a coming off a contender series win, where Teresa sort of ducked into a spinning body kick that KO'd her, and then was minus 1,000 versus Victoria Leonardo. I think the same thing with the last fight. Andrea Lee's a big step up for her. I think we've seen a similar fight. Natalia's really a Taekwondo fighter background. She uses a lot of pitter-patter, point scoring, kicking, staying at range. When you do close the distance, she likes to throw the 1, 2, 3. I can see that working, but I just think Andrea Lee's experience in that she's fought. I go back to the Shevchenko fight, the little Shevchenko, where same sort of thing. You got a striker. She took it right to the ground. She submitted her. I think we see something similar in that. Plus 300 seems, or I got plus 300 on Lee. I just think that's too wide. I think that we're going to see pretty close fight here. She's shown, Natalia's shown a 90%, 92% takedown defense, but really against subpar competition and stuff, right? So I think the sub is live. I just don't know if Natalia can get there. I think if she does win, it's mostly going to be on points to decision. So I like the value on the Lee side.
Danny, how about you?
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be a very minus EV type of win for Silva. I feel like Lee has moments where it's kind of close, but Silva ends up just pulling away down the stretch. I don't see a ton of grappling success here for Lee personally. I think Silva in the clinch against Jazz. I know Jazz not a great wrestler herself, but she looked pretty strong there herself in the clinch defending the takedowns. And I think it's on the feet. I think Silva's much faster, way more athletic. I think she hits way harder. So yeah, I lean Silva. Obviously, the number's massive, but I think she should be a pretty big favorite.
I put 1.5 units on Lee plus 300, so I'm riding with Art here. And I guess my view here is, look, Silva looked horrible last fight against Macy Barber, and that was my biggest deterrent. Now, she almost won that fight.
Lee, not Silva.
Lee, sorry. But Lee looked, she didn't look great on the feet. It was pretty concerning. But at the same time, I was thinking about it. And the more I think about it, it's like to think that that's going to be predictive of her next fight. You have to make a fairly large assumption. And that's that Andrea Lee at 34 years old, training full time, is going to suddenly be shot. And that seems extraordinarily unlikely to me. More likely than not, you're going to see a decent amount of mean reversion here, where you just see kind of the form we've seen from her the last 2 to 3 years. And if that's the case, this is a very, very close fight. Not pretty much no one has easily outstruck Andrea Lee standing. Most of the time people are beating Lee, it's through top time. And I suppose you could make an argument that Silva could get top time, but I don't really think she's a very good offensive wrestler. And kind of to Art's point, I actually think if anyone's going to get takedowns, it's probably Lee. I do think Silva's got decent takedown defense, though something of note, Jasmine's probably the best wrestler she fought, and Jasmine never really went to her legs. And while Lee does tend to wrestle upper body a lot, you did see her start to mix in a fairly nice single leg against Barber in her last fight. And yeah, I think Lee could get 2 to 3 takedowns in this fight. I doubt she gets a ton of control, but I think there's takedown upside there. And I just look at it, and again, to Art's point here, I don't think you can make Silva finish high. Why? Because she finished Victoria Leonardo and Teresa Bleda. I don't think you can make it a high percentage outcome here. And if you can't make it a high percentage outcome, Lee's 2 inches taller with 5 inches of reach here. She's got very good striking metrics herself, and she's done it against much, much, much better competition than what Silva has. Look, I think you can make a case for Silva winning the fight, but I think it's a pretty competitive fight. Like, unless Andrea Lee, again, unless she is shot at 34 years old, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a very competitive scrap. So, yeah, 1.5 on Lee for me. We'll see what happens. Moving on, though, we got Gerald Meerschaert taking on Andre Petroski. Petroski, this line has bounced all over the place. Currently sits Petroski minus 221. Come back on Meerschaert plus 186. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
I mean, I could never lay it with the guy Petroski, like the kind of the gas tank issues that we've seen. Obviously, it showed to be much better in the tournament fight last time out, but I do think he can land takedowns here. I mean, GM3 does play off his back a good bit. I mean, yeah, that's kind of where I lay, more or less. I think Petroski, decent size favorite, makes sense. I think GM3 late, if anything. But no, I think he should be all right.
All right, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I get the fade on Petroski just most of the time based on his cardio concerns, right? And I think he addressed it in his last fight against Germany. He showed a lot better there. So if you erase the cardio concerns, I think Petroski's sort of better everywhere. I just think his top pressure, if it does get to the ground, is better. Decent ground and pound. I think he prioritizes the position more than ground like damage or submission. He's really trying to post you, trying to keep on top position. Whereas Meerschaert, he's more give up the position. He doesn't like to take damage. He can pull guard. This in a BJJ fight, they're used to like 50-50 top and bottom, but for MMA, whoever's on top wins. And I think Petroski is going to be the stronger guy, stronger grappler. I think if they clinch up against the cage, he's going to get those takedowns on the cage. Like I said, the only real concern with Petroski is that cardio concerns. I might throw a couple of bucks on like Meerschaert round 2, round 3 KO just because he can death gas. But I think it's Petroski's fight to lose. I am looking at the fight goes to decision prop. I think it's around plus 200, whereas Petroski by decision plus 300. I think the BJJ can sort of cancel each other out. Like I said, if Petroski's prioritizing position over submission or damage, then he's going to go for the control. The cardio is not really concerned because he's spending a lot of top time, and I think he can cruise to a decision there. So I'd like the fight to go decision at plus 200 rather than Petroski decision at plus 300.
Well, I bet Gerald Meerschaert here for 1.5 at plus 230. I even think the current line is not horrendous. I guess my view is this. So let's just like take a brief. And to be clear, I don't necessarily disagree with either of your guys' takes. Like, I think Petroski is a talented fighter. Obviously, he's a talented wrestler. He's got a black belt. He's got a lot of tools you look for in, a successful UFC fighter. But like this guy's competition so far, Michael Gilmore and Hu Yaozong, his first 2 fights in the UFC, legitimately 2 of the worst 5 fighters in the last 5 years on the men's side of things. Subs Maximov with a guillotine pretty much immediately. And then in his last fight, he beats Wellington Turman. Now, I agree. The Turman fight, he dug deep, showed some heart there. But what people forget here, and it's funny because I've seen no one mention this, Wellington Turman is the man who was held down on bottom for 7.5 minutes by Carl Roberson. Feels worth noting, given the history of Carl Roberson's grappling. Even taking it a step back, if you go to the tough, he couldn't control Brian Battle on the mat. Now, Brian Battle, he's got okay jiu-jitsu, but we just saw in the Renat fight, he had nothing when he got flattened out there. We go back even further in Petroski's career to the Jeffrey fight. He got takedowns, couldn't hold him down on the mat, though. I do not think his control is as good as it looked in the Turman fight. I think he can get takedowns here for sure. No doubt about it. He's obviously the more physical fighter of the 2. But, I mean, Gerald is... It's funny because I think Gerald's optics are just so bad every fight that everybody just kind of thinks GM3 sucks, even though he's basically a 500 UFC fighter with 15 UFC fights and has some really fucking good wins in his career. It's not like this is a guy who fights wrestlers and loses every time he fights wrestlers. To be clear, I do think Petroski can get takedowns here, but I think he's playing with fire. Meerschaert has swept grapplers as good as Petroski are. Meerschaert has a gift for reversing position. He's one of the best in the UFC at it. So, I don't think Petroski is going to be able to, if he gets tired here, just have a safety valve of take him down and kind of lay on top. I think he's going to be in danger. In space, I think he's going to be in a lot of danger here. Meerschaert, he's slow and he's hittable, but he is not a bad technical striker. And he does hit kind of hard, and those body kicks he throws will be hell on Petroski here if he can get them off. So I guess I look at it and I'm like, yes, Petroski has the ability to process grapple him to a win. That wouldn't shock me. But I think in terms of finishing equity, I think it's a lot higher on the Meerschaert side than it is on the Petroski side. And even going one step past that, I think Petroski is live to end up just winding up in a bunch of precarious positions here. Like if he starts to slow down and getting tired and getting swept and whatnot. Yeah, I have no real issue with small favorite Petroski. I think it makes sense just based on, the styles here. But I also think Meerschaert has the tools to put him in danger at a very high clip and probably finish at a very high clip. So I like the Meerschaert side. We'll see what happens. Moving on, though, fourth fight of the night. And I forgot, this is the tough finale card as well. I didn't forget. We got Cody Gibson taking on Brad Katona. These odds actually just dropped today. Katona minus 170. Come back on Gibson plus 145. I don't have strong feelings here. I guess I lead the Katona side only on the fact that I don't think Katona is a very good fighter, and I hate using narratives like this, the one that I'm about to give, but Brad Katona just for some reason knows how to win MMA fights. I don't know what it is, but this guy subbed Bryce Mitchell. He was competitive with Hunter Azure. The only guy who's really beaten Brad Katona bad is Moroz, who beats everybody bad. He beat Timur and tough. I think Katona he's like a complete generalist. He's bad at nothing and he's good at nothing. And you look at Cody Gibson and he's a tough guy, decent striker, but I just kind of trust Katona, a bit more than I trust Gibson here to, be able to kind of pull this fight out, be able to push him to the fence, kind of grind him out a bit, potentially threaten more on the mat than, Gibson has the ability to. Yeah, I don't feel strongly about it. Art, do you have a better take than I just gave?
Fortunately not. No, I haven't been following the season enough. I saw a couple of fights there. Like you said, at a high level, I probably lean Katona just from the records, from what I've seen of him. It's worth noting that I think he beat who did he beat in the first Ultimate Fighter he was on? Bryce Mitchell, yeah.
And Philip.
I think it's a better resume. I probably lean that side. No play for me on this one, but that's probably if I had to pick something on that side, yeah.
Lags, how about you?
Yeah, similar to Art, I haven't been following this season tough much either, so not much of a strong opinion here either.
Well, all right. Moving on,
Yep.
We got Kurt Holobaugh. He's taking on Austin Thud Hubbard. Again, another Ultimate Fighter finale here. Hubbard minus 175. Come back on Holobaugh plus 150. Honestly, at first glance, when the lines first came out from this, I kind of was pretty sure I was going to bet Hubbard. And after looking at it a bit more, I'm definitely not. I don't feel strong about the Holobaugh side, but I do think he's a bit more tested. He's fought in the aggregate, I think, a bit better competition than Hubbard has. I think he's a bit more technical boxing wise. I think potentially he could have a bit more takedown upside in this fight. The big issue for me and the reason I'm not betting Holobaugh is just, look, the guy's old. He's 36 years old at this point. Hubbard again is a generalist, but Hubbard does throw vicious leg kicks and he's got okay power and he's 31. That's something I'm just kind of trying to steer away from a bit. And I would back Holobaugh if I felt confident he was going to ground Hubbard and hold him down, but I'm not that confident about it. And the truth is, Holobaugh hasn't really been tested that much post his last run in the UFC. So I think it's a competitive fight. I think Hubbard being a favorite is fine just because, he is younger and he has more recent UFC experience. But I lean Holobaugh at the number. I actually do kind of like the over just because, Hubbard is not typically the guy that engages in a brawl that Holobaugh will get into. And I think near Pick'em, that's not a bad look. Art, what do you think here?
Yeah, I don't mind the over. I think, like you said, Hubbard's not really great at anything, but he's good at everything, sort of thing. I do think his run in the UFC came across a lot of grapplers. He lost to Ramos, he lost to Madsen, Selecki. I think he could have the grappling upside here. Again, no strong lean. I kind of like the over. If he does go grappling, I think it probably goes to decision. Probably a pass for me, but yeah.
Lags, have you looked at it?
Yeah, no, I have. It's probably a pass for me as well, but I lean more so the Hubbard side as well. I think on the feet, a bit more volume, and I actually think he can get more grappling going out of the two, if anything. So lean Hubbard for me. But yeah, GTD, I like the look.
Fair enough. Moving on. We got Gregory Rodrigues, RoboCop, coming off a brutal knockout against Bruno Silva. One where I laid the heavy chalk on Rodrigues.
Bruno Ferreira.
So that was not. Bruno Ferreira. Wow. Dude, lads, I might have to get it like a CAT scan or something. I don't know.
That's why I'm always here. That's why I'm always here to catch it on.
RoboCop currently sitting to minus 361. Come back on Tiuliulin plus 286. Lags, I know you made a bet here. What are your thoughts?
I know you made a little contrarian take to the bet, and we'll get to that obviously. But I like the under here, minus 165. The under 1.5 for a unit. Obviously, if Holobaugh takes the obvious path to victory, takes him down, I think it's an easy sub. But even on the feet, I think the power is night and day. Really, don't get me wrong, Tiuliulin hits hard, but I think he's there to be hit, and Holobaug's obviously there to be hit as well. Durability's there. We've seen it be cracked, so I like the under 1.5.
Art, how about you?
I can see that play. I like the Rodrigues side. I just nothing from Tiuliulin really impresses me. He's just a straight brawler, comes forward a lot of 1-2s. He does have power, but doesn't do anything great. Doesn't throw enough leg kicks for me. So I think if Rodrigues can just stay out of a brawl, it's probably his fight to win. I think he can stay on the outside, pop leg kicks. Like said, get him take down, get the submission there. I think that's alive. My concern is with Gregory's chin. That last fight where he got knocked out by the left hook wasn't a crazy powerful shot, but he did get dropped and he went out cold, which is contrary to what happened with the Chidi fight where he took the knee clean and he took a ton of damage in that fight and came back and won. So I think Rodrigues is probably better, but it just I think that the straight out brawl is live, like Lag said. So the 1.5 probably a good look. But I think Rodrigues can find the finish if he doesn't get finished as himself.
Yeah, Rodrigues, he's an odd. His chin and his durability are kind of odd because it's funny because I remember I bet Jordan Williams against this guy on the Contender Series against RoboCop, and that was one of those fights where I felt coming into it that RoboCop was fairly chinny just based off of some of the reactions I'd seen regionally, and that Williams could knock him out, and he did. Then he comes out there and he goes to war with Armin Petrosian. Chidi almost murders him and doesn't die. And I'm like, oh man, he must have good durability. Then he almost gets finished by Jin Young Park, and then he gets knocked out cold by Bruno Ferreira. And I'm just like, maybe he doesn't. I don't really know what to make of it. In the context of this fight, so here's my contrarian take, and I haven't bet it, and I don't know if I will, but I do think the under looks good and RoboCop sub looks good if he decides to go for it. If he takes Tiuliulin down, I don't really see Tiuliulin being able to stop much of what he offers. That said, I have two concerns there. Number one, I don't like how Rodrigues tends to go for these exotic subs. Like you look at the Petrosian fight. He had a dominant position on Petrosian's back and basically ended up losing it because he decided to attack a Suloev stretch. Like for whatever reason, the guy refuses to attack a fucking rear naked choke. It's like the most efficient sub in MMA to hit. And I think he could get it very, very easy here if he wants it. So that worries me that he'll go for something dumb and look to roll to an armbar, end up losing position. It won't happen. Second thing is just generally, will he grapple? Like that's kind of been, this guy has given away multiple fights in his career to date because he just has decided not to grapple. It's hard to make sense of. I did see he said in interviews this week he has, but if he doesn't grapple, unless Tiuliulin clips him, I kind of think it'll go over at a decent clip. Like Tiuliulin's got a decent chin, and I think Gregory he manages distance fairly well. I don't think he's going to be getting into like too many crazy exchanges with Tiuliulin, especially off a KO. So I don't know. Like I am on the one hand, like I see the angle for the under because I do think if RoboCop decides he's going to come out and sub this guy, he's going to come out and sub this guy. On the other hand, though, if he just does what he normally does, I think it goes over. With that said, I am kind of tempted by Rodrigues sub 1 and sub 2. It's plus 375 and plus 650. And like to me, it's like if you think if the line, let's say the line is right, and that it ends inside the distance at minus 170, which is like 63%. I feel like 40% of that is probably like a RoboCop sub, you know, like that's kind of how I feel about it. So I think early sub numbers are decent. Lags, what were you going to say?
So I was going to add two things there. So one, if you like the overs, like you were talking about a little bit, starts round 2 on DraftKings is plus 100. And secondly to that, if you want to take that, instead of taking a shoey bet, because I know you was a little gross, I'll do a shot bet for you. I got the under and you have the over if you end up taking the over.
Fine, but then if we do a shot bet, I get to pick your liquor and you get to pick mine. I'm not going to give you like Everclear or anything insane.
All right.
But
all right. Fair
enough. Okay,
Fair enough.
Done.
All right.
We'll make that bet and I'll decide later if I want to put money on it.
I was just going to take a shot out of the freezer and then we call it even. But
no, I'll drizzle you something.
We'll figure it out.
All right. All right, we'll see what happens. Moving on though. Oh man, Chris Weidman. He's telling the people he's coming for another title run here. He's 39 years old, off his leg breaking in half. Hasn't fought in almost 2.5 years. But Israel Adesanya better fucking watch out because Chris Weidman's back. Line currently, Brad Tavares minus 267. Comeback on Weidman plus 222 or plus 227. I could never fucking bet Weidman here. It's funny because like I briefly gave it a thought just because I do think Brad is one of these guys who excels at giving away minutes in fights. Like you look at his fight with Omari Akhmedov. Omari couldn't hold him down. Omari couldn't have much standing success, but Brad was just tentative enough throughout that fight to go to a split. The ACJ fight, kind of similar. It didn't go to a split, but it ended up being a pretty sweaty fight just because Brad, when he would get to space, wouldn't let his hands go at all. And so like I look at this fight, I was like, Weidman, he could maybe do the same thing, except you got to think about the macro here to a degree. Look, Weidman's fought better guys. He's a former champion. He's a great wrestler, all that stuff. Should he be able to outperform Omari and ACJ? Yes. The thing is, he is 39 years old. He literally broke his leg in half in his last fight. He has been off for over 2 years. Like the chances that and prior to that fight with Hall, he had just beaten Akhmedov. And I bet Weidman big in that fight. And in my opinion, he looked like absolute shit against Akhmedov in that fight. Just my take, but like he gassed out horribly, even though he had a lot of top position. He came out with I know he's been training with Wonder Boy. He came out with like a karate stance. And every time Akhmedov let his hands go, he hit him. And so I feel like there's no chance that he is getting better. If anything, the floor on Weidman here is like plus 1,000 territory. He could just show up as in complete corpse form. But with that said, the only thing, and I probably won't play it because of that. I looked at the over and I was like, I'm kind of interested in the over in the GTD just because Tavares, he's not, there are guys who, if you get tired and you have hurt, they'll bite the mouthpiece and go for the kill. Brad Tavares is not that guy. He'll hurt you and then just sit back, throw a jab, and just continue to kind of work his game. But Weidman's floor off this layoff, it's just so low. I don't know how you can even get behind it. So it's going to be a pass in the aggregate for me. I think Tavares should win. But again, Brad Tavares' style is not one that I'm willing to really lay chalk with. What do you think, Art?
I'm the same. I'm passing this faster than Tom Brady in the pocket there. There's no way. It's just there's just too many unknowns. And one of the things that you do in MMA betting is you don't have to bet every single fight. It's an easy pass. Or when you do get more information, say for example, we get to the weigh-ins and Weidman's just completely shredded. And he's like, man, he took this thing seriously. He's coming back. He's maybe a little bit of sprinkle there, but I just haven't seen enough. The layup's too long. I think he's too old. Just Tavares is very mid. He just doesn't do anything great. You know, the best thing about him is his takedown defense. So maybe he keeps it standing. Weidman tries to get it down. He has good BJJ. Tavares keeps it standing, and it turns into a sloppy strike fest. I just don't know. If anything, I might come in live after I see a couple of minutes of how they look in the cage, how they're moving around. But I'm not forcing a pre-flop bet on this.
Lags, what are your thoughts?
Pretty much echo your sentiments on the GTD thoughts there, John, and passing on the GTD because of the Weidman. Obviously, the pause with the Weidman concern with the injury and the layoff. But yeah, I don't know. People were betting the under here and Brad KO as like I don't understand like why though. Like maybe because Weidman is shot. Like it's not like Brad is some like big hitter really. It's only plus 150 for the KO. The under is like minus 120, like we were talking about with the over. So I don't know. I don't get the love for that for Brad finishing this fight. He's not a historical finisher.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Moving on, Art, going to start with you here. We got Damon Blackshear. He's taking on Mario Bautista. Bautista currently minus 220. Come back on Blackshear plus 185, and it looks like Blackshear's taking money. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, you have to note that Blackshear fought last week, and so now he's fighting again this week, double cutting. This is probably a big step up for him as well. Bautista's kind of a little bit older there. I think Blackshear could throw something together. Again, just based on the unknowns, just the sample size of, I think the last time somebody fought back-to-back weeks, one of the women fights, and she didn't look too good in this round 2, round 3. Given a full camp, full training and stuff, maybe I'd take a little shot on Blackshear. I'm just not confident enough just with the step up from what I've seen. I'm content on passing this one as well.
Lags, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Blackshear fighting, a week's removed from the last fight and a massive step up in Mario Bautista is just like a recipe for disaster, really. So, I think Bautista pretty big fave makes sense. I don't have much to add. I think Blackshear, taking this fight's pretty ballsy himself.
Yeah, I'm going to be a broken record, but I agree with you guys. I mean, we don't know. That is having to cut weight twice. If it was at 145, I think I'd feel a bit better for Blackshear here. Having to cut back to 35 again a week later, though, these guys, they design their camps around peaking right around their fight. He's already had his fight. In terms of the fight itself, I'm with you, Art. On a full camp, I think I'd be inclined to take or if it wasn't back-to-back weeks and he had time to actually game plan for Bautista, I think I'd be inclined to take a poke at Blackshear here. The problem for me is, in addition to all those kind of macro variables, I don't really know what to make of Mario Bautista. So he's 6-2 in the UFC. Obviously, his losses, he got knocked out by Trevin Jones, whatever. It was a one-punch KO, and he lost to Corey Sandhagen. I don't really care about that. The thing is, and the thing why I can't get a beat on this guy, he's looked phenomenal recently. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. But let's look at those. Jay Perrin, not in the UFC anymore. Brian Kelleher, completely washed. Benito Lopez, now a realtor, I also believe not in the UFC anymore. And Guido Canetti, who's 42 years old and was never good. Yes, he cut through all of those guys. He looked great doing it. But it really tells me nothing about what's going to happen when he makes a move up to the next level. We haven't seen this guy fight a high-level opponent since Corey Sandhagen. And, that was competitive for the 2.5 minutes it lasted, but he got submitted. So it's I'm not going to put any stock into that because obviously Sandhagen's a lot better today too. So I just don't know. I like what I see in Bautista. He's a good athlete. He's got decent boxing, good kicker, pretty good wrestler. He's just a nice, well-rounded athlete who I think is pretty good. But, you can't lay the chalk here. There's just way too many questions. Blackshear is probably the best guy he's fought in 3 years. It's an easy pass for me here. I don't even really have strong feelings on the total just because, what's Blackshear going to look like? Last time he was on short notice was Zalal, and he gassed out bad down the stretch in that fight. Is he only going to have one round of gas here? I don't know. I still don't really know. Jones knocking out Bautista was weird, especially because I know people think Trevin Jones has power, but if you actually look at outside of the Valiev and Bautista fights that happened back-to-back, he is not historically a power puncher. Never has been. So I don't even know what to make of Bautista's chin. So I'm happy to sit back, maybe play it live, try to collect some data here. But yeah, no real interest in wagering money on this fight. Although it should be a fun one. I'm excited they made it. Moving on, Marlon Chito Vera taking on Pedro Munhoz. Vera, I believe he's minus 185 at the moment. Comeback Munhoz plus 160. Lags, what are your thoughts?
Well, the pod is notorious Cheeto haters. However, I think it's probably a good fight for him. Like, I think Munhoz is just a guy who's going to come forward, look to land heavy, but he's there to be hit. I mean, as long as Cheeto lets his hand go a little bit, I mean, I feel like, I'm not going to say that, like, the line's justified by any means because he is a slow starter, but, like, I think it should be a good fight for Cheeto. So.
Yeah, my initial instincts were the Munhoz side. The more I look at it, the less I like, though. I think they have similar problems, Cheeto and Munhoz. Munhoz is a bit more high output than Cheeto is, but both of them, they lack defense. They're easy to get off on. And so, that's why I was kind of thinking Munhoz early on in the week. I was going to bet him. But then you think about some more, and it's again, it's the age thing. Cheeto, this is a guy in the middle of his prime. He's obviously, in spite of the issues that I've had with Cheeto's process and why I faded him in the past, he's a dynamic striker. He has huge critical hit equity in every single fight, and he's in his prime. Munhoz, on the other hand, he's 36 years old, and the truth of the matter is, Munhoz against Chris Gutierrez, I would have bet 3 years ago for the max. And I passed that fight because I was like, Pedro looks like he's slowing down to me. He does not look like he's got it anymore. I'm not going to turn around just because he won that fight and bet him against Cheeto here. I mean, ultimately, Cheeto's a lot bigger. He's a lot longer. And I do think, although I will say, the over being minus 350 is fucking crazy for two guys who have finished 3/4 of their combined wins. That's nuts. And on top of that, Pedro being so much smaller in stature, I think opens up a lot of opportunities for some of Cheeto's real critical hit type stuff, some of his knees, his elbows, stuff of that nature. I think Cheeto KO at plus 425 is not horrible. And just under in general, it's how these guys don't have defense. They're both, pretty powerful hitters. And Munhoz is one of the best guillotines in the sport. How wrong can you be? I haven't bet anything here yet, but I'm kind of thinking towards the under. What do you think, Art? Anything you like here?
I get it. So the over being minus 350 doesn't make any sense, but I think it's predicated on just Munhoz being able to take a lot of damage, Vera taking a lot of damage. But Vera also leads the bantamweights with the most finishes. He's always dangerous. I think the finishing equity comes more from the Vera side. I don't really see many Munhoz finishes outside the guillotine, sure, but I think Vera's savvy enough to be able to defend it. One thing I did want to highlight is that Munhoz's game plan really is about striking from the outside. He uses a lot of heavy leg kicks. I'm not going to say heavy, but he focuses on leg kicks. And so I go back and I look at the Gutierrez fight. 57% of his significant strikes were leg kicks. Against Sean O'Malley, 26 out of 26. 100% of his strikes were leg kicks. Dominic Cruz, 26%. Aldo, 49%. Jimmy Rivera, 43%. So all around 50% of his significant strikes are leg kicks. Vera can check a leg kick. I just think so. I think the Vera KO side is very live just because Munhoz is hittable. I think he's very countable when he is throwing those leg kicks. It's just really a matter of volume and urgency for Vera. One thing, if you went back, Vera's lost the first round in his last 8 fights. So if you like the Vera side, I'd say come in live. You might be able to get a plus number if Munhoz, he stays from the outside, he pitter patters, throws some leg kicks, he stands on the outside. Round 1 has 0 volume to it, and he wins, a close round 1. You might be able to get a plus number on Vera when he comes back in round 2 and 3. I think that's probably what I'll do, but I like the Vera side. I think just he has more finishing equity. I think he's longer, he's more powerful. Munhoz finishing, I don't really see it. I did look on DK. Vera has the finish only line at minus 250. I like that line more than the money line because I think, again, if Munhoz is going to win, he's going to win a decision sloppy just based on just more volume, just being more active. So if I take the finish only line, it takes that out of the equation and I get all of Cheeto's finishes.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great point. And I agree with you. I think Munhoz's finish is more predicated on a sloppy Vera shot, if he got hurt, than it is on him really knocking Vera out on the feet. So we'll see what happens, but I think that's an interesting angle. Moving on, Neil Magny, Ian Garry. All right, I'll start with you here. Ian Garry up to minus 500 here. Is that crazy or is it accurate?
I've been trying to fade Ian Garry forever. Okay, so I understand he's good. His striking has improved a lot since his first entrance to the UFC. When he first came in, it was a lot of single jabs, just pop, pop, pop. Now he's mixing in a couple of 1-2 longer combos, things like that. I do think if you go back and watch some of the Garry fights, between rounds, his corner is always telling him to just touch, move, touch, move. I think that's a game plan normally coming in. Magny just being Magny, he's so hard to finish. He's so durable that I don't see many Garry finishes. I'm considering a play on not Garry inside the distance. I think Garry keeps it standing. I know people are saying Garry sub and Magny has struggled with grapplers. Sure. Just Gary's not that guy. He's not going to, if he has his choice, he's going to stay on the outside. He's going to pop his kicks, 1-2s from the outside, touch. It probably goes to decision. Magny has a way of just making it a Magny fight. And if you go back, John Anik, Joe Rogan, they call it Magny 101. He just has a way of grinding guys up against the cage, making a dirty fight. One other thing to note is Gary's used to having the longer reach. This fight, Magny's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage. So Magny can even play that game where he stays on the outside. He pops. He's known to push a pace, have higher volume and stuff. So I think the line's too wide. I like the Magny side. I might play a money line. I think the not Garry inside the distance is probably safer. I think it probably goes to decision on a high clip as well. Magny's not completely known as a finisher either. So I think it gets there a lot of the time. I just don't see many Garry finishes that, I think he landed the high kick on D-Rod. What percentage of chance is that going to happen to repeat? The Song fight should have gone to decision. He got rocked in the first fight, got knocked down. I had Song KO round 1 at plus 3,500. I was kicking myself for that. And then, he got finished in round 3 with, less than 50 seconds left. So I think it goes to decision. Gary's probably live to win the decision. I like all of those props, but I think the line's too wide on Magny.
Lags, how about you?
I wouldn't say as much as Art was saying of a fader on Ian Garry, but I've been fading Ian Garry like just in the last fight with D-Rod, and like you touched on a little bit with the head kick. It is what it is. But similar to the Pickett angle that I touched on last week, and I may end up taking it here on this fight, the over 1.5 on this fight. It is a bit juiced up there, but minus 170 for the over 1.5. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's funny because I haven't faded Garry that much. I bet D-Rod against him, and I bet Jordan Williams against him. But I've been waiting for the opportunity, because I think it's coming, and this might be it. To Art's point, and as Gugabe said on his show earlier in the week, Magny has a way of dragging people into this quote unquote Magnyverse, into getting them to play his game. It's just, and I am not. It's weird because I do think it's binary in some respects. If it turns out Gary's really good in the clinch and can easily win the pommel and disengage, Magny's probably fucked here because Magny doesn't deal well with leg kicks. And to me, his his head strike defense in the last couple fights has looked visibly regressed. I just think he's slowed down a fair amount, which should leave a lot of opportunities for a guy who likes to master range in the way Garry does. The other side of that is, though, if Gary's not that great in the pommel, and honestly, the Weeks fight for me is a bit concerning because Darian Weeks did get a fair amount of clinch control time in that fight. And I mean, Neil Magny would be minus 400 against Darian Weeks. Let's be honest. I do think there is some scope here for Magny doing Magny things and having a close fight and potentially even getting on top of Garry here. We haven't seen Ian Garry on bottom with a good grappler on top of him. It hasn't happened yet. And this could be it. I don't really know. On top of which, it's man, you have I think Ian Garry is a good prospect, to be clear. I do not think he is some bum fraud, but let's also contextualize, his career today. He's 25 years old. He's very young. He beat Jordan Williams out of the UFC as a bum. Darian Weeks, competitive fight out of the UFC as a bum. Gabe Green, decent fighter, but I mean, no, Gabe Green is not getting fights in the top 15 or getting a fight against Neil Magny. Kenan Song, he won that fight emphatically, but he almost got knocked out first. And then Daniel Rodrigues. And admittedly, the Rodrigues performance was a very impressive performance. The head kick he landed was sick, But let's also not kid ourselves. It was 2.5 minutes, and Rodrigues had no grappling threat he could really present there. And the speed, you could see right away, was just so far in the Garry favor. It was insane. And I expect the speed to be very, very far in the Garry favor as well here, too. And kind of to Daz's point, this is my fear. If you gave me this fight 3 fights ago, I'd probably have a multi-unit bet at Magny at plus 400, just because historically I'm pretty happy to fade like anybody who hasn't had a top 15 fight at like big dog money with Magny. But dude, I mean, Lags, did you bet him against Rowe?
I don't know if I did. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I did off the top of my head.
I think I had ghosted decision in that, and I did not.
Well, I think I passed on Magny.
I bet Magny at minus 150, and I did not feel good about that bet at the end of it. And that was very surprising to me, because I was like, Phil Rowe, this guy is basically built for Neil Magny to do Neil Magny things to.
Same with Max
so
Griffin,
I don't know.
Too. I think those two fights are glaring.
I'm debating the Magny play, the Magny poke, but I also just have this feeling that he's declined. Like, this should really be, at the end of the day, an IQ test for Garry. Like, if he can easily disengage from the clinch, he'll win it fairly emphatically. I have very little doubt about that. But Magny's fought many guys who haven't been able to do that.
I mentioned you earlier in the week. Oh, go ahead, Art.
I was just going to say the last time Magny was this big of a dog was to Shavkat Rakhmonov, which is understandable, and Gilbert Burns. So is Ian Garry on that same level where he can be the same price tag as those guys? I just don't see it. I think it's wide. I wouldn't surprise me if Garry won. It's just I don't think he covers his price. He might squeak out a 29-28 or whatever it is, but I think it's a little wide.
No, I totally agree with that angle, to be honest with you. Like, Shavkat's probably a fight from the title, a fight or two from the title. Gilbert Burns obviously fought for the title. Yeah. What were you going to say, Lags? Before we move on?
All I was going to add was with what Daz was talking about a little bit, and I mentioned to you earlier in the week, is this also feels like a little bit like, and this is all narrative, but like short notice for Neil Magny on a pay-per-view, big money. Neil's probably getting big money for this fight against Garry on short notice.
Yeah, true.
Taking it for the money, maybe. So
we move on. We got Zhang Weili. She's taking on Amanda Lemos. Lags, I'll start with you here. Line on Zhang, minus 318. Comeback on Lemos, plus 268. What are your thoughts?
Banger co-main event and then banger main event to kick off this, or to finish this pay-per-view. Lemos is a weird one for me because I feel like all of her finishes are predicated early because of that gas tank. And so a 5-round fight with Zhang, who has a grappling edge, I feel like in the striking, obviously it's pretty close. I mean, power, I feel like it's pretty close too. But I think Zhang, cardio, grappling edge, I think that's obviously going to end up getting her the win here. But I like the fight ends by sub at plus 430. I just think that's a good way to attack it. I think that Zhang's easiest path to victory here, and I think a Lemos sub isn't that crazy.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. I do think that Zhang should really womp here. I feel like Zhang is the much more skilled fighter everywhere this goes. But with that said, I mean, I am not entirely sold that Zhang is like some super durability bully. Like, we've seen her wobble before. We've seen her knocked out before. And obviously Amanda packs like almost like men's MMA type power. So her like wobbling and or finishing Zhang wouldn't be shocking. The other thing is that scares me and why I just could never lay this number on Zhang. I bet Carla against Zhang, and it's not because I'm a Carla stan, which I am, but like we've seen Weili Zhang held down and not be able to do anything on her back. She is really, really bad when she gets put on her back. You know, I remember Santino did a pod where he talked about her coming to fight ready, and like they had her grapple a bit, and he was like, we need to literally focus the entire camp on this. And her team basically shut it down. We saw it a bit in the Carla fight. The only reason she got up is because Carla stood up. I really, and like, do I think that Amanda Lemos is very likely to come out here and process grapple Zhang? No. And I don't think she has the cardio to do it. So I don't think she will, but it is a concern of mine that it's like one of those things where like Zhang could miss a kick and end up on her back. And now suddenly Lemos is on top of her. The thing is, it's a women's fight. So it's like these juiced like GTD, ITD numbers. They're not something I'm interested in. I think your end sub angle is interesting, Lags. The only thing steering me off it is like both of these women, they will throw down and they both can crack. So I don't know. It's probably a pass for me. Art, what are your thoughts here?
I was leaning more to the under, and I'll talk it through. Lemos, really good Muay Thai striker, right? Really good kicks, really good leg kicks, really good counter. She likes that right hand counter, and Weili does the same thing where same kicks, right hand counter. I can see it being a chess match with both girls trying to like bait the counter out. So a lot of times you'll see a jab to try to bait the counter out when you're pulling back to counter back, right? It's like 1 and 3 they do. I think that could end at any time if it does stay standing. I agree with Weili using grappling more. You know, we've seen it in the last fight, in the Rose fight and the JJ fight, where she's used more grappling there. And so if she does grapple, I think she deserves to be a bigger favorite. But I think if it stays standing, it's hard to put Lemos plus 200 against anybody in a standing fight. And I think some of it is based off of Lemos' cardio concerns, right? She looked kind of slow in the round 3 against Angela Hill, but Angela Hill can push a pace. Not that Weili can't. She's looked, I think, slow in her UFC debut, but I think she took that fight two weight classes up. So the Lemos side, I lean Lemos just based on, you know, the different striking. I think the counters can come. Weili has been rocked, but it did come from a head kick. I can see it being, you know, going a couple of ways. The fight ends by sub. I just don't know. Weili will, if she will grapple, then yeah, it's definitely live. But if she doesn't, Lemos isn't the one going for takedowns, so it'll become a standing match, and then your sub ticket's sort of up in the air, right? If you're, I guess Lemos is live for a sub from the bottom, or some like sub from a sloppy guillotine or something like that. So I guess that's live there. But yeah, I think both girls like to stand at range. They blast the kicks, the right hand counters there for both girls. They both switch stances a lot. The cardio is concerned, so if you like Weili, say maybe a 3-4-5 KO type of line, or you know, live betting it after Lemos survives 2 rounds and stuff. But I was thinking of playing the under 3.5, minus 150, minus 160 in that range. I might get to the window on that.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. And if it does end early, I think it's very likely going to be under 3.5. So I doubt we're going to get a 4-5 finish here. Moving on, main event of the evening. We got the bantamweight GOAT, Aljamain Sterling, minus 255, taking on Sean O'Malley, plus 215. Art, I'll throw it to you first. What are your thoughts here?
I like the Aljo side, man. I think it's more, you know, Sean's been really smart about his rise to the UFC. He came off Contender Series. He's not wanting to take these big fights early in his career when he's not getting paid big money for them, right? So he sort of handpicked his fights, a lot of strikers, a lot of like big favorites. We really haven't seen any of Sean off of his back, grappling for long periods. What I was going to say is if you watch the Yan fight, Yan did grapple him. He got him down a bunch of times. Sean was able to get up, but I think during his get-ups, he tends to give up his back a lot in his get-ups, and Yan prioritizes the ground and pound more than the position. If you watch the Aljo versus Yan fight, Aljo is completely opposite, where he's always attacking the back, trying to get under. He's clinching, going to the back. Any way he can get to the back, he'll do it. So we just haven't seen it from Sean, how he's able to defend it. I took some Aljo sub early at plus 250-ish sort of thing. I also have the under 4.5. If it stays standing, I think Sean's live, right? One thing to note, though, Sean is a heavy kicking guy. He stays at kicking range, likes to throw a lot of kicks. 32% of his strikes contain some sort of kick or knee. A lot of his strikes are single shots. So 84% of his shots are either jabs, crosses, single kicks, right? I think Sterling's seen them. It's going to be hard to KO somebody just with a single shot. It has to be set up with a shot and stuff. So I like the Aljo side. The Aljo by knockout, I think it comes more from ground and pound. I think we did see Sean's chin hold up in that Yan fight. He took a couple of big shots. He took a big elbow in the on the ground against Vera when his leg stopped working. So I think if Aljo gets him to the ground, can't find the sub, the ground and pound is live. I think on DraftKings I put together a same game parlay of tied knockdowns, Aljo most takedowns, and Aljo by KO, plus 1,500-ish around there. So I think that's live, and just Aljo's able to push a pace. Sean should be able to keep up, but we haven't seen him in a grappling heavy exchange, right? So who knows what that looks like. I just think he has more ways to win. O'Malley's live for KO at any time. So yeah, I like the under 4.5 Aljo sub and that same game parlay there.
All right. What about you, Legs?
To add in real quick there, Art, you also had Aljo money line. Because I was just looking. I remember I was like, I could have swore it was 4 legs when you said it.
Well, I say Aljo KO has 2 legs, but
oh, gotcha.
Right, if he wins, it's going to be by KO. Winner by KO, and Aljo. So Aljo KO is 2 legs. Yeah.
But it's nice people are finally putting respect on Aljo's name, and I feel like this line is very deserving. I mean, just kind of like what Art was talking about. There's not really a wrestler who's going out there and trying to actively look and take Sean down. And I mean, Jan took him down 6 times, and now Aljo, one of the best wrestlers, one of the best grapplers in the division. I think it should be pretty easy work. I played the fight doesn't go the distance minus 135 for a unit and a half. I think it should be good. Easy spot for Aljo, honestly. I mean, don't get me wrong, like on the feet, Sean hits hard. He's fast. I get it, but I just don't think he's going to be able to stuff the takedowns, and I don't know how you could project him to.
Yeah, I missed the good ends ITD and underlines. I am considering a bet on Aljo. If it gets to like minus 220 or better, I think I'll take it. I mean, Sean's been a guy I've bet on a fair amount. I bet him against Peter Yan. I think he is obviously a very talented fighter, a very talented striker. What I think some people, and I've seen a lot of like passion for Sean this week pulling the upset. And what I think some folks are missing here, people are evaluating Aljo, I feel, off his last couple fights, which have been against the absolute best fighters in the sport. You know, Henry Cejudo, who really has a game that's built to compete with Aljo, and he won that fight. And then the 2 fights with Jan, and Jan, another guy, very, very hard to grapple and just brings relentless pressure and cardio, hits the body, insane pace. If you go back before that, though, you know, the fights that led up to the first Jan fight, I mean, dude, Aljo was fighting like the top guys in the division and destroying them, like destroyed Brett Johns, destroyed Cody Stamann, destroyed Jimmy Rivera, beat Pedro Munhoz easily, destroyed Corey Sandhagen. Like, these were not competitive fights against very, very good fighters. And all of those guys that I just listed, they're all better grapplers than Sean O'Malley is. And he had really, the only guy he didn't really have grappling success against was Munhoz. Now you look at O'Malley and it's like, yeah, O'Malley took some extra time to try to work on his wrestling against, you know, to prepare for this fight, which is why he didn't fight him back in April. But I mean, wrestling, learning a career's worth of wrestling does not happen in a year. It just doesn't. You know, could he have improved his first level takedown defense some? Yeah, he could have. But I doubt he's improved his ability to stop chain wrestling. And in terms of on the ground, like, you know, Aljo's a Henzo black belt, like or Matt Serra black belt, who's under the Henzo tree. He's got maybe the best jiu-jitsu for best top game in the UFC. Obviously an elite back taker, elite ground and pound, elite physicality. I even think most of the cardio takes about Aljo coming up were obviously very wrong when you go back and watch him out grappling Cejudo late in the round 4 in that fight. And then you look at O'Malley, who the last time someone tried to enforce a grappling pace was Jan, and O'Malley was dead tired at the end of round 3 of that fight. So, like, I actually think there's kind of a cardio advantage here for Aljo too. Look, O'Malley's big, he's long. He's obviously got a puncher's chance here to knock Aljo out. The thing is, and the reason I still come down on Aljo being value in this spot is, first of all, Aljo defends head strikes very, very effectively at distance. He's very, very tough to hit. He's awkward and he's got weird optics, but he's very, very hard to hit in those spots. Second of all, Aljo's stupid durable. Outside of a Moroz fight where he dove literally headfirst into a leg kick that landed right to his dome and put him out cold, I mean, the guy's never gotten close to being finished by strikes. Jan knocked him down in the first fight in round 1, but if you go watch the end of that fight in rounds 3 and 4, Jan is landing absolute hammers on Aljo's jaw, and he is just chin tanking them and continuing to, you know, come despite being dead gassed out. He's got very good durability, in my opinion. So you're dealing with O'Malley really needing to either knock him out cold or compromise him multiple times in this fight. And given there's a huge grappling edge on the Aljo side and probably a cardio edge and a massive jiu-jitsu edge, it's just kind of hard to see, like, will Sean have like the top, like, if don't get me wrong, look, if he stuffs all the takedowns here, he's probably a favorite in this fight, O'Malley. But even there, I think there's a lot more scope for Aljo competing standing with O'Malley than there is for O'Malley competing on the mat with Aljo in this fight. Like if it goes to the mat, O'Malley is getting absolutely mauled down there. Maybe he doesn't get finished, but he's probably not getting up off most takedowns in this fight. So yeah, I mean, I just look at it. I think the market, like at Lag said, it's nice to see it finally giving Aljo some respect, but I still don't think it's going far enough just because he's had a couple grinds with Cejudo and Jan, who are two guys who stylistically pose incredible problems for his style. You look at the guys who haven't, again, he's destroyed them all. So I think Aljo should be probably in the minus 300 to minus 350 range here. The thing that kind of sucks is just like his ITD lines are absolute dog shit. Like, what is it? Minus 110? Like, that's not minus 115. Like, I can't. I'd rather lay the juice than bet that, you know? Even now, when the fight ends, he's obviously gotten juice too. But yeah, if Aljo gets down to like minus 220 or better, I'll take a poke.
I was going to say, I didn't see, when you were saying plus 110, I was shocked to see that because I know before his ITD was plus 175 as high as that and plus 150. So I was shocked.
Sub was plus 175.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And like Kaiser said here, I think this is kind of my thing too. O'Malley likes to back up and fight at distance, but Aljo, I mean, look at how he closed distance against Corey and against Jan. He's incredible at cutting you off. If you let him go forward on you, he will press you to the fence pretty easily. It doesn't really matter who you are. So, yeah, I think Aljo rolls here. I might end up betting him. We'll see. But yeah, thanks for having out everybody tonight. Good luck on your bets this weekend. Art, do you want to shout out your stuff, where they can find you? I know you do some written content, right?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter, Mr. Electrocute. I am doing some articles for fightingstats.com. That's where some of my stats come from there. But yeah, I'm trying to get back into it. It's just a lot of time, a lot of competing priorities. So it's hard to tape every fight every week, but I'm getting in there. NFL season starting up, so I'm going to try to put that on the back burner, focus on some MMA. But I appreciate you guys having me. This was great.
Thanks, Art. We really, really appreciate you coming out. Guys, again, we'll be back with you next Wednesday. I think we got like 8 more shows in a row or something like that before we get a break. It's a crazy run here. As always, you can follow me on Twitter, John, MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags. Good luck on your bets this weekend if you're following. If you're fading, also good luck. You've had a lot of success lately if that's the case. So hopefully that stops. We're turning it around, though. Drop a like and subscribe. Have a good week. Good luck, everybody. It's Aljo season. Take it easy.